In this video, I'm going to show you how you can use some of the built-in functions in Excel. So here I have a spreadsheet from some company that has sales figures based on products 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then split up by region, so north, east, south, west. And I have a column for the totals, and I also have a row for totals for average, max, and min. Now I could manually type in a formula and do something like B2 plus C2, etc. And there are times where you will have to type in your own formulas, and we'll get to that in a future video. But for now, we're going to use some built-in functions. And one way to get to functions is to click this F of X button here, and it will show a bunch of different functions that are available in Excel, and there are lots of them. Right now what I'm seeing are just the most recently used. I can switch this to all and start scrolling through, and you will see that there are just a ton of functions for all types of things. So Excel is a very powerful program, can do a lot of very useful things, but for now, since we're just getting started, instead of using this, we're actually going to make use of the Autosum button that is up here on the Home tab, and it's in the Editing section. Now, depending on your screen resolution, you may actually see the word Autosum here beside this weird-looking symbol, which happens to be the Greek letter sigma. So what I want to do is I'm going to click the drop down here, and you'll see that here are some of those functions: sum, average, count numbers, max, min. So those are the ones we're going to be using for this. So obviously for the total, what I want to do is add everything up, so that would be the sum. So if I click sum, now notice where my cursor is right now. I'm in cell F2. I'm going to click Autosum, and it's going to put in the sum function. And this is what functions look like in Excel. We have the name of the function, and then we have parentheses, and inside the parentheses we have a range of cells. And in this case, the range is B2 to E2. So it's going to add everything from cell B2 through E2, which is exactly what we wanted to do. So that's good. So if I do this again, okay, that looks good. It's adding everything from B3 to E3. Now if I do it again, you're going to notice there's an issue here. Excel, when it can, it's going to try to add any numbers that are above the cell that you're currently in. Well, I don't want to add these two. I want to add B4 through E4. So two ways to solve this problem. One, since I've already clicked the Autosum button here and we already had the function in here, all I have to do while this little, you can see this kind of little blue dotted line is flashing around here, I can highlight the cells that are the correct cells. So I'm going to highlight B4 through E4. Notice how it changed my function. Now it says sum of B4 to E4, and that is what I actually want. Another way to fix it, I could highlight this whole range of cells. So I'm highlighting from B5 through F5. I'm going to come up and hit the Autosum now, and let's look to see what it put in there. And notice what it did. Since I highlighted that whole range, it knew that this time what I meant was I wanted it to add the other cells in that row that had numbers, and it put the correct formula in. And we'll do this one more time. So once again, if I click this and it's wrong, all I have to do while it's still flashing around is highlight whatever cells I want. Now this brings up another interesting point that sometimes people struggle with when entering formulas. Oops. There we go, come back. All right, so sometimes people enter a formula, and people who are used to using their mouse instead of just hitting enter to go from cell to cell or tab to go from cell to cell, they might click outside of the cell thinking that this will let them go down. Let's say I want to type down here. Well, notice what just happened. It replaced what's being added with B7, so now all it's adding is just B7. Whenever a formula is active like that, and you see that little dash dotted blue line kind of flashing around, you don't want to click outside there. You're going to mess up your formula. So what I need to do is make sure I highlight these cells, B6 to E6, that's how I want, and then to get out of that cell, I want to make sure I hit enter to enter that formula into the cell. Now I didn't do this over here, but let me show you a quick way to do this. Since I wanted to do a bunch of numbers or a bunch of sums, and I want to do a bunch of sums down here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to highlight all of these from B7 through F7. Since all of them are blank, when I go up to hit this Autosum, it knows I'm not trying to add these cells together because there's no numbers in there. And like I mentioned earlier, by default it's going to try to find numbers above to add. And since there are numbers above each of these cells, when I click this, it's automatically going to add the numbers in each of those columns. Now you'll notice this issue that we talked about in a previous video. What's happening here is the sums are too big to fit in those columns, so I just need to come up here and double click in between the columns. And there we go. It automatically resized them as wide as it needs to be to display those totals. Okay, moving down to the average. So now I'm in cell B8, and what I want in here is the average of the north region. So I want the average of products 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 for the north region. I want the average shown down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my cursor down here in B8. I'm going to come up and click the drop down now. If I just click on the sigma sign here, what it's going to do is just do Autosum by default. But if I want the average, I actually need to click this little drop down arrow, go down to average, and it's going to put the average function in. But you need to be careful when you do the average and you have a spreadsheet set up like this and you have a totals row in there, that total is going to throw the average off. You don't want that as a part of the average. So what I need to do is then highlight just those numbers for products 1 through 5. So I'm finding the average of B2 to B6, and I'm going to hit enter. And now I'm going to do the same thing for the max. Click that drop down, there we go, max. Same thing, I don't want the sum to be a part of the, or the total to be a part of the max, so it's going to show 23,000 as a max, and that is obviously not correct. The highest was product 3, which sold over 8,000. So I'm going to highlight just cells B, let's see, B2 to B6, and then min, the exact same thing. So one more time, min, oops, I missed, there we go. Okay, so that's how you do the average, max, and min functions. Now, this is going to be talked about in more detail in a future video, but there's a little button right here, a little box in the cell called the fill handle, and I'm going to just go ahead, I'm going to grab all 3 of those, use the fill handle, and it's actually going to put the average, max, and min functions in every single one of those. And once again, we'll talk about that in a future video and how that works, but that is the fill handle feature. So that is, I think, everything you need to know about the Autosum feature.